The internet cannot believe it. It's the only positive review on the entire internet for Dark Phoenix. I am very prepared for the likelihood of getting a lot of people giving me thumb downs, maybe even unsubscribe. But you know what? I don't care because I like this movie. I like this movie. And I cannot for the life of me figure out why it is so hated, especially when compared to other movies in this franchise. You all act like this movie is like worse than some of the other movies in this franchise. Like people even saying this is worse than X-Men 3. Are you out of your mind? I really, for the life of me, cannot figure out why this film is so hated the way it is. I mean, it has a 22% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes. Not that I give a shit about anybody or anything that comes out of Rotten Tomatoes, but I'm just saying 64% of the audience I get approve it. 5.7 IMDb. Not that I care about any of this goddamn critic nonsense, which in fact destroyed the art of film criticism. But I'm just saying, so many people hate this movie, and I attribute that to basically a lot of MCU fanboying. Right? When this film came out, it was probably at the peak of the MCU. It's when Infinity War and Endgame had just come out, and all those people were just shitting on anything that wasn't MCU related. No matter if it was DC Universe, no matter if it was the Fox X-Men movies, and I think the critics hopped on board those sentiments, and I totally was prepared to see a travesty of a movie when I watched this, but I was surprised that I actually enjoyed it. And some of the complaints that I hear for this movie is that it's nothing like the comics. Oh yeah, it's nothing like the comics. Oh yeah, kind of like First Class was like nothing like the comics. Like virtually, if you were to take any X-Men film out of this series and tell me which one was 100% nothing like the comics, it would have been First Class. But you don't complain about that. Instead, that's a masterpiece. You see all these videos saying First Class is the best X-Men film out of the Fox X-Men movies. Like no. So don't sit here and tell me that this film is no good because it's not like the comics. Mystique was never Xavier's foster sister. That is bullshit. She, Xavier, Banshee, Havoc, they were not part of the X-Men First Class in the comics. That's nothing like the comics. Oh, you don't say nothing about that. Kitty Pryde having the power to transport people's consciousness back in time in Days of the Future Past is nothing like the comics. You don't complain about that. Rogue being a complete and utter disgrace to her comic book counterpart and being a weakling and pathetic piece of shit abomination of a character in the X-Men trilogy was nothing like the comics. Yet X-Men 2 is the best comic book movie ever. You say nothing about that. William Stryker being a general or whatever and in charge of the Weapon X program is nothing like the comics. You say nothing about that. Sebastian Shaw being a central or integral part of Magneto's past and being in the backstory and being a Nazi is nothing like the comics, and so forth and so forth. Oh, but those movies are great. Oh, but Dark Phoenix is terrible because it's nothing like the comics. I mean, to me, it's just complete hypocrisy. And no, I'm not saying that this film is perfect. As I've stated before in these X-Men film reviews, the only film that is perfect in this entire Fox X-Men series is Logan. All the other ones have issues. Even your beloved X-Men 2 and First Class and Days of the Future Past. You all jock those movies. In my opinion, this film has less issues than some of those other ones. But again, I really think that people just wanted to kick this franchise while it was down because the MCU was rightfully so, was doing a great job. But I think the critics and the fans just didn't even want to give this movie a chance, and they hated on it excessively. And to say that this film is worse than X-Men 3 is absurd. Like, you're out of your mind. X-Men 3 was offensive to me as a fan of X-Men. Like, the way they treated the characters, they killed Cyclops off screen. They made Rogue into a pathetic nothing. I just want to kiss my boyfriend, like, and take the cure. Like, that's an insult to the essence of X-Men. So don't say X-Men 3 is better than this. Like, come on, man. You know, and X-Men Origins Wolverine is better than this. Like, you're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. You know why I like this movie? I like this movie because it has drama. It aims for drama. There's a sense of dramatic tension throughout this movie. And the film has dramatic scenes. I feel like out of the entire X-Men series, this film has some of the best dramatic scenes. I like the tone of this movie. And again, what makes this film, or rather, what makes a movie like, say, Age of Ultron better than this movie? I mean, it's like Age of Ultron it's not going to win any Academy Awards, but it's a serviceable, decent movie. Same thing with this one. Like, this movie is a decent film. Like, it's not an abomination. But all I keep hearing from the fans is that it's nothing like the comics. Like, oh my God, it's supposed to be the saga, a saga. They should have made 3 or 4 films. Like, are you kidding me? Like, come on, man. Like, where have you been? Don't you see this X-Men series? Since when has there ever been a part 1, part 2 in this entire Fox X-Men series lineup? Like, really, we could say that about any of these sagas that they tackled. We could say that about Days of the Future Past. Or, you know what I'm saying? It's like, that should have been 2 films. Like, come on, man. Like, you complain about, like, that it should have been a saga. It should have been 2 or 3 films. You know what should have been 2 or 3 films? Or you could bring those sentiments. You know where you could bring that? To X-Men 2. Wolverine just gets introduced to the X-Men team, and then Jean dies immediately in X-Men 2. The team has barely been together a day or 2, and all of a sudden we're supposed to be like, oh my God, that was so touching. Oh no, Jean's gone, and Wolverine's there. Like, no! It's like, dude, you just met her. You just met her. That was contrived. Jean should have died in the 4th film, 5th film. That is a valid complaint. Oh, but no, Dark Phoenix should have been a saga. It should have been 3 films. Like, it's complete hypocrisy to me, man. And at least we got a previous film to establish the characters. At least we got Apocalypse to establish the relationship between Sophie Turner's Jean Grey and the young version of Cyclops, right? And I think it carries over, right? And there's been a 10-year gap at least. But in X-Men 2, it's been like, what? No matter how long it's been, Jean just met Wolverine. Right? We just got introduced to these characters. There hasn't been this sense of an established team in X-Men 2. And then Jean dies, and all of a sudden it's supposed to be dramatic. And it didn't work for me. But my point, I'm not here to pick on X-Men 2. I'm just saying those sentiments that, oh, it happened too fast for Dark Phoenix, I think that's more valid for X-Men 2. But yeah, X-Men 2 is a masterpiece. It's one of the greatest comic book movies ever. Like, this film got a bad rap, and I feel like it was unfairly treated. But like I said, I love this film for the drama. And yes, this film has issues, and I'm going to talk about those issues. But I just want to say I love this film for the drama. This movie actually has scenes, dramatic scenes. And I'm going to talk about those. And I can't say the same for some of the other films. Like, say, a film like X-Men Origins. That movie did not have any scenes, dramatic scenes. It just kept on jumping. It was like a sanitized G-rated version of Wolverine's backstory. But this movie's worse. Dark Phoenix is worse. It's the worst film in the entire series. Like, give me a break. I just want to say that I love the opening to this film. Seeing Jean accidentally murder her mother and seeing the trauma it created, I loved it. I thought that was a very well conceived and directed and acted scene. And I've heard people like, that's nothing like Jean's past. That's nothing like the comics. You know what else is nothing like the comics? Mystique being Xavier's foster sister. So, also another touching thing that I like is I like seeing that interaction between James McAvoy's Xavier and young Jean Grey. That was great, man. That was great. And especially the dialogue and the sentiments that are present when Xavier is like, you're special, and then Jean is like, special is just a word for, and then Xavier finishes the sentence for her and he's like, weirdo, freak. Yeah, sometimes that's right, you know. But then he says it's also can mean that, you know, you're special or gifted, you know, and I love that. I also love the implications, which are going to bear fruits in this film, the implications of lying to Jean. And it's not so clear cut, right? I mean, considering the fact that the reason why Xavier lied to Jean was because her father basically disowned her because she accidentally killed her mother. And she doesn't know that. Like, she's under the presumption that both her parents are dead. But the notion that one of your parents is alive and consciously makes the decision to disown you, that is without a doubt going to be extremely hurtful. And Xavier chose to keep that information from her, to lie to her, whatever. And, you know, I mean, it's not an easy decision to make. I don't think all of us would make that decision. Again, it's not an easy decision to make, and there's going to be a lot of repercussions for that. But at the same time, I can empathize with Xavier for doing that. Especially when you see the scene, you see little Jean, and you see how, like, she's just this little girl, and it's like she's already been through so much, and you don't want to hurt her more, but in the back of your mind, there's the potential that this is going to hurt her even more later on, you know, and it's just, nothing is clear cut here. There's kind of a moral ambiguity, right? Despite later in the film, Beast and Mystique being adamant that it was wrong, Xavier, what you did was wrong. But I don't know, maybe not all of us would make that decision, or would make the decision to hide that information from Jean. And I just have to say, and this is contrary to the popular opinion on the internet, I think Sophie Turner is a great Jean Grey. I think she did a great job in this film. I truly believe that she is going through the trauma that she's going through in this film. And I think she does an outstanding performance as Jean Grey. Again, I don't know what it is what people have with her. Like, she was awful. She was terrible. Oh my God. And I'm watching this and I'm like, I'm still waiting to see the terrible performance. You know, I've had to sit through terrible performances from Jennifer Lawrence as Mystique. I really don't like Jennifer Lawrence. I don't think she's a good actress. I think she did really good in Days of the Future Past, but that was it. As far as her other performances as Mystique, whatever. I'm indifferent to them. But oh yeah, man, she was awesome. Oh man, the fact that she died in this movie. Oh man, this movie's trash. No, I'm gonna get to Mystique's death very soon, and I can't wait to discuss that. So her father disowned her, and her discovering this she's is going to have some major repercussions. And she's going to blame Xavier and look at him initially as a traitor or something, But later on in the film, when Jean looks into Xavier's mind, she's going to see that what his intent wasn't malicious. He was coming from a place of compassion. And then that's what makes her disown or walk away rather from the aliens. So let's talk about the aliens. So here's a negative to this film. These aliens are generic as hell. I am not gonna lie. Like, these aliens look like Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy, and then they basically can morph into humans, and that's basically it. Like, we learn very little about these aliens. The only thing we learn is that their home planet was destroyed and they want to restart their race on Earth. That's it. And they're depicted as evil, almost for the sake of evil. And it's definitely a major shortcoming for this film because the villains feel generic as hell. And even though you got an amazing actress, one of my favorite actresses, Jessica Chastain, who was amazing in Zero Dark 30. I mean, it's like she's good she's good with what was given to her, but it's not much. It's really not much. And I'm not gonna lie, out of all the villains, for the most part, that our protagonists have encountered in this series, this is one of the weaker ones. I don't think it's as weak as Sebastian Shaw and the Hellfire Club in First Class. I thought that was lamer, but this is basically it doesn't excite me. There's no performances where I can relish in. Like, even though I have my certain misgivings or certain criticisms for X-Men 2, Brian Cox as William Stryker was amazing in that. Ian McKellen as Magneto, amazing. Michael Fassbender, amazing. I mean, Jessica Chastain here, it's just like whatever. I do not know the name for these villains for the life of me. I don't know their names. I don't know. I know they say it, but it's like not in. It's like I don't care because they're so generic, and I'm indifferent to them. Now, there are aliens that are present in the Phoenix Saga, and I just read the Phoenix Saga, read the whole thing about like maybe a couple of months ago. And it's so funny how like people complain like, oh, this is nothing like the comics. And I'm like, really? Do you really want it to be like the comics? Like, don't get me wrong. I love the comics. I really do. But reading it again, there's some dumb things in there. Like that would not translate well into film. Like we have like little leprechauns and stuff. Like you may think that I'm not being serious, but there's like little leprechauns because remember Black Tom, who is Banshee's cousin, plays a major role in that, and Eric the Red, and when they go to Cassidy's Keep or whatever, the castle in Scotland or something, there's some little leprechauns there that help the X-Men out. It's like, really? Do you really want that to be in there? I mean, like, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, that Phoenix Saga in the comics went on for like a whole year. And there was a lot of stuff that happened in that series. And I don't think they'd be able to fit all that stuff in even 2 films, right? But coming back to these generic aliens, I will agree that there was no reason. I will agree with the critics that there was no reason whatsoever not to have the sheer empire in this movie. Jessica Chastain's character should have been Liliandra's sister. Or maybe you don't even cast Jessica Chastain. Cast a man to play Liliandra's brother, who basically wanted the Phoenix power so that they could use that crystal to conquer the universe or whatever. You know, I mean, there was no reason why not to have the sheer empire. Like, okay, you got Jessica Chastain, dress her up as Lily Andra's sister, dress her up to look like a sheer empire individual, whatever, and there you go, comic book accurate. Instead, we got these generic aliens that look like Groot. I don't know why they made that creative decision. I mean, the sheer empire characters should fall into the X-Men property. So I don't think it had anything to do with, like, let's say we don't own the characters to the sheer empire. That should not have been a reason. And I think that really hurt the film, especially for the quote-unquote fans. For me, I mean, it's a shortcoming, but it's not a deal breaker for this film. Like I said, what saves this film for me is the drama. That's what's important. The emotion. This film has emotion. This film has drama. And to me, that's the most important thing. I had a lot of criticisms for Day of the Future Past for it not being like the comic book. But like I said, at the end of the day, that movie, it resonated with me emotionally. It had it was powerful. It was deep stuff emotionally. And that's what makes it a good film. And I feel like the same sentiment is here. Like, okay, like this is not necessarily like the comic, but there's some emotion here. And I appreciate that very much. And if you want to talk about comic book accurate, this film is way more accurate than X-Men 3 as far as an adaptation of the Phoenix Saga. I mean, you have the shuttle launch that takes place, which was in the comics, and the shuttle launch happens, and the X-Men have to go and help out the astronauts, and when they go help out the astronauts, that's when Jean absorbs the energy of the Phoenix. That's comic book accurate. Way more accurate than X-Men 3, where it was basically she already had the Phoenix power in her. And yet, some of you are saying that X-Men 3 is better than this. Like, you folks are insane to me. Seriously, I for the life of me cannot figure out how you can subscribe to those sentiments. So yeah, that's comic book accurate. We got the shuttle launch. I appreciate that. I really appreciated that when I saw this movie. I was like, yes, this is like the comic. See, the problem with X-Men 3 is that they did not attempt to do the Phoenix Saga. What they did was they tried to combine the Cure storyline with these events that took place later on in the X-Men series, comic book series. So, like way later. So you had the Phoenix Saga that took place in the late 1970s. But when like, let's say, when Wolverine had to kill Jean, that actually happened in the comics. When Wolverine had to kill Jean because she was like the Dark Phoenix, that actually happened in the comics. But that happened in like the early 2000s. And I think that happened in the new X-Men run. Basically, Cyclops started having an affair with Emma Frost, so that his and Jean's relationship fell apart. And then Jean and Wolverine were able to now fully express their feelings for one another, because they've been harboring feelings like for decades, right? But it's too late, because now Jean has been overwhelmed by the Dark Phoenix, and Wolverine has to kill her, right? And when he basically shanks her, stabs her with the claws, and he's like, "I love you," like, that's right out of that series. But that series happened again in the early 2000s. So X-Men 3 skipped all this history and jumped to like this timeline in the comic books when she already had the Dark Phoenix inside her, and Cyclops and her relationship basically dissolved because he had an affair with Emma Frost, and et cetera, et cetera. And I'm just saying, like, and you're saying that movie's better? Like, no, it's not. Oh, man. one thing that I really appreciate about this movie, and just like I appreciated about Apocalypse, and yet some of you hate that movie. You think it's one of the worst in the series. I disagree. I think it's one of the best in the series. And some of the sentiments, positive sentiments that I had for that film come to this one. One thing I like about this movie is that the X-Men are together. There's actually an X-Men. Think about it. In X-Men 2, the team is split and Jean dies, and then X-Men 3 is an abomination. X-Men First Class, the team isn't together. It's a prequel. Days of the Future Past in the 1970s, again, there's no team. So this is literally probably the third film after all this time where the X-Men are actually together and functioning. X-Men 1, that happened. Apocalypse, that happened. And then here. That's why I like this film. Because it actually has an X-Men team together and going on missions and doing stuff. Hence why they're going out to help the astronauts in the space shuttle launch. That was amazing. It's like, yes, I've been waiting years to see this. And just like Apocalypse, we actually have Cyclops treated with some dignity and respect for once. Even though even though I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of irritated that Mystique is the leader. But again, it's like this is a different timeline because of what happened in Days of the Future Past. Because she chose not to be a villain. So now she's no longer a villain. So where are you going to put her character? You got to bring her back to Xavier. She has to be an X-Man, right? If she's not going to be a villain, this is a different Mystique than the one in the comics because of the film version of Days of the Future Past. See, in the comic books and in the animated series, the X-Men stopped Mystique from assassinating that VIP. But in the movies, Mystique made the decision on her own. So even though I was a little irritated, like, man, like I want, what the hell is this? Mystique being the leader. What the fuck is this? But I feel like in the context of the series, it makes sense because of the new direction with Mystique being a good guy. Yes. So like I said, man, I like this movie because Cyclops is treated with respect. We got Cyclops, Jean, Nightcrawler, Storm, Quicksilver. We actually have X-Men. We got Beast. Oh my God, this actually looks like the X-Men I grew up with. Unlike Days of the Future Past where you got like this hippie version of Xavier, Beast, and Wolverine. That's it in the 1970s. So I appreciate this very much. Mystique, now I'm not going to lie, man. I found Mystique, I found Jennifer Lawrence, and this is a major negative for this film. So also with my criticism of the aliens in this movie, another major criticism I have is for Jennifer Lawrence. Jennifer Lawrence was so insufferable in this film. When she died, when she got impaled, I literally jumped out of my seat and yelled and clapped. I was glad that she died. I fucking hated her in this movie. I fucking found her to be insufferable. She was an annoying nag. Especially, what the hell was with that whole ex-woman line of dialogue? Like, that was so unnecessary. I mean, it almost ruined the movie for me. Like, that came out of nowhere and it was unnecessary and it reeked of modern radical feminism to me, which is a bad thing. See, true feminism is a good thing. Radical feminism is a bad thing because it's not about equality. It's about superiority. And that line of dialogue reeked of that. I don't know what was going on in the fucking writers' minds. I don't know if this was a collaboration between the writer and Jennifer Lawrence for them to say that line. And I don't know what the fuck was going on to make whoever came up with this idea to think it was a good idea. But whoever wrote that, I'm sorry, you're a fucking moron. Like, Like, come on. Like, that rubbed me the wrong way. You want to know something? And I'm going to be 100% transparent. And I love being transparent with my audience. I'm sorry if it upsets you or rubs you the wrong way. But I have to be honest. I always want to be honest with my audience, man. I'm not going to bite my tongue and try to be civil when I feel passionate about something. Right? And I'm not going to get nasty, but I'm going to say this. That line of dialogue about ex-women, and the line of dialogue is exactly like this. It goes like this. It goes, and the women are always saving the men around here. Maybe we should change the name from ex-men to ex-women. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? In the previous scene, we just saw Nightcrawler save Jean. What the fuck are you talking about? And plus, she's saying this to Xavier, who basically sacrificed the ability to walk so that so that humanity wouldn't be attacked by nuclear missiles in first class. What the fuck are you talking about? Like it's hard for me not to get to go on a real huge rant and tangent. But what I'm going to say is that they use that line of dialogue in the promotion and publicity of this film. It was in the trailer. And this is a major reason why this film was a financial flop, in my opinion. This, in conjunction with the MCU fanboys and the critics in the mainstream media riding the MCU and kicking this movie, ripping this movie unfairly apart. But I think a major portion of the audience, when they saw that line of dialogue in the trailer, they decided not to see this film. Why? Because it reeks of agenda. And I'm not gonna lie, that was me. When I saw that line of dialogue, I was hyped. I was going to see this movie in the theater. I was hyped. I was counting the days. I was like, yeah, they're going to do it right. It's going to be better than X-Men 3. Then I saw the trailer and I saw that line of dialogue and they cut it with Storm saying, end the discussion. Oh my God, dude. I was flabbergasted. I was so upset. Why? Because it reeked of Hollywood pushing the radical feminist leftist agenda, which is not right. It's not right. When I go and watch a movie, I'm going to be entertained. I don't want to be preached to. I don't want some radical leftist, radical feminist politics to be preached to me, man. And whoever came up with that trailer is a fucking idiot, because that successfully made me not want to watch the film. And I didn't watch the movie. I didn't go to the theater. And as a result, this film was a box office bomb. And I can only speak for myself, but that literally was why I did not go and see this movie. I saw, oh man, no, this is going to be a preachy film. There is an agenda in this film. I refused to watch this film in the theater. And it wasn't until it came out on Blu-ray that I was like, man, I guess I have to watch it because it's X-Men. I didn't even buy the Blu-ray. I saw it for free. And I was surprised at how good it was. And I was like, literally, as far as like agenda, that stupid line of dialogue uttered by Jennifer Lawrence, that was literally the only thing in this movie that reeked of that. And I was like, why did they do that? Why did they decide to put that in the trailer? Why did they think that was a good idea? I mean, it really just shows you how fucking stupid Hollywood is. And is it any reason why Hollywood has been suffering at the box office? Why nobody wants to see their films? Have you noticed that when a film is traditional and subscribes to those traditional, wholesome, classic American values, the film is a huge success? I mean, look at Top Gun 2. Look at The Sound of Freedom. Like, why? And then when they try to get all preachy and all this stuff, those movies fail. And no, I don't think it has anything to do with like, oh, right wing people. You know, I don't like to get political, man. I don't want to be divisive with my audience, but I feel like it has nothing to do with being right wing and people want to see right wing stuff. No, people want to see entertaining things. That's it. They just want to see entertaining things. We don't want to be preached to by any side. And that trailer made it seem like this film was going to be agenda filled, and it wasn't. It turned out that it's not. It's only that one line of dialogue, and it's an absurd line. So that's the end of my tangent in regards to that line of dialogue. But yeah, Mystique, even outside of that line, she's just, her acting, Jennifer Lawrence is just directed in such an insufferable way in this film. She comes across as an annoying nag. And I was so glad that she died. When she got impaled, I was elated. I was happy. I was clapping. I'm like, yes, she's dead. She's finally gone. And that's another reason why I love this movie, because Mystique is gone. Jennifer Lawrence is gone. Yes. I'm jumping up and down. I love this movie because they killed off Jennifer Lawrence. I loved it so much that I wish Gene could like take her off that spike that she impaled her on and slam her on it again. Like, do it again. Do it again. I hated her in this movie. And another thing is, okay, Days of the X-Men Apocalypse is over. She has no reason to look like Jennifer Lawrence anymore, to be in that human form. Yet she's walking around the mansion looking like Jennifer Lawrence. Why? Why? Because in Days of the Future Past, she said she didn't want to be a symbol or for a world that didn't exist. Okay, but those events in that happened in that film are over. Why are you not walking around looking blue? That's what we want to see. We want to see Mystique blue. And you know why? Do some research and you'll find out that Jennifer Lawrence, who's a diva now because she won an Academy Award and because she's like the headliner for Hunger Games. Oh, I don't want to be in the Mystique costume because it's uncomfortable. Okay, Jennifer, whatever you want. Oh my God. You know, I hate it when Hollywood politics start to impact the creative process for movies. And this same thing happened with Halle Berry, beginning with X-Men 2. And I have suspicion to believe that this played a role in why Cyclops was relegated to a background character for X-Men 2 and X-Men 3. Halle Berry won the Academy Award for Best Actress for Monsters Ball, and because of that, she acted like a diva and started making all these demands and being like, I want a bigger role in X-Men 2 and X-Men 3. And as a result of that, I feel like the film suffered because of it, in my opinion. And it's like, I really don't like that. Like, there's probably contracts involved, but if it was me, if I was the producers, if I was the filmmakers, I would be like, okay, we're gonna buy your contract out. We don't need you to return. We're not gonna let you dictate how we want to tell our story. Get the fuck out of here, right? But Jennifer Lawrence, she gets whatever she wants, so she doesn't have to wear the suit. That makes her look like Mystique. And you know that was the reason why she didn't want to look like Mystique in Apocalypse also. And she got what she wanted. At least they wrote a reason into the story, which is that she didn't want to be the face of a world that didn't exist. But, I mean, still, though, man. Still, I feel like that's not right. It's not right for some diva actress or actor to start dictating how the story should be for their characters, just so they could return. If I was the producers, I'd buy their contract out and tell them to fuck off. I seriously would. I mean, they had no problem telling the actor that played Cyclops to fuck off for X-Men 3 because he went and signed up to be in Superman Returns. I don't know why we can't do that with Jennifer Lawrence or Halle Berry as well. But let's talk about something good. I loved the scenes with Jean and Cyclops in this film. I thought they were beautiful. I thought they felt like something that came straight out of the comic books. I really appreciated them. Again, I like this movie because it actually has scenes where the characters divulge their feelings and we get to see how they think and how they feel. And the scenes with Jean and Cyclops, I've wanted scenes like this since this series was announced. Back in 2000. I mean, the closest thing we have to this is like X-Men 1 from the year 2000, and that was all about Wolverine and Rogue, the abomination that was Rogue. Right? There was barely anything between Jean and Cyclops in those movies, except like, don't worry, baby, and they hug, and that's it. Here we actually get them expressing their feelings. You know, I particularly love the scene where Jean is like, I can hurt you again. And he's like, I'll take that chance. Don't go, Jean. Don't go, you know? And she's like, no, but I won't. And then she puts him to sleep using her powers. That's like, those kind of scenes, the sentiments in those scenes feel like something out of the comic books and the animated series. And I appreciate those scenes for being in this movie. And again, it's another reason why I actually enjoy this movie. One thing that I have to mention, you know, and this is like a little nitpick, but seeing Storm seal the cracks in the space shuttle, yeah, that's not really going to work, especially since there's no atmosphere in space. I thought that was absurd. Again, it's a little nitpick, but whatever. I have to say it. I do have an issue with the relationships and characters not maturing. As far as it being 10 years after the events of the previous film. See, I don't know why they went with this whole template that they have to tell each subsequent film in this series in a separate decade. I think that really limited this series. I don't know why. Why? Like, why? What's the reason? I understand why First Class took place in the 1960s if you want to tell the backstory to basically Xavier meeting Magneto. Okay, that makes sense. But Days of the Future Past didn't have to be in the 70s. Apocalypse didn't have to be in the 80s. And this film didn't have to be in the 90s. Because it's absurd. It's like, it's 10 years later. The characters look the same. And it feels like Apocalypse happened last year. And it feels that way as far as how the characters are written. Because, you know, if it really had been 10 years, these characters would have been way more mature. Would have the establishing relationships that would have been presented to us would have been more mature. Cyclops and Jean they probably would have been married by now. It would have felt more like what you see in X-Men 1. You know, not that they're dating, right? Because it's like this film introduces the characters again, and it's like, again, it feels like Apocalypse happened last year or even last month, and it feels like Jean and Cyclops are dating. They're just boyfriend and girlfriend, and I'm like, no, 10 years. If 10 years had passed, I'd expect them to at this point be engaged at the very least. And yeah, again, to me, it just all falls on like we have to tell each subsequent film 10 years apart in a different decade, yet the characters look exactly the same as far as age-wise. That was very stupid from a creative standpoint. Another thing that I'm kind of on the fence about is that the X-Men are loved now. They're loved. When they finish a mission, they have crowds of people like X-Men, and I'm just kind of like, nah, no. That makes absolutely no sense considering the events of Apocalypse. Seriously, the way Apocalypse ended, the X-Men and all mutants would be feared and hated. Why? Because the events of Apocalypse showed the death and destruction of thousands, if not millions of people and trillions of dollars in property damage. The X-Men would not be would not be loved and have crowds chanting their name. I mean, like, no. What the hell? Like, to me, that was dumb. That was dumb. Even if they go and help out the shuttle, I mean, I just feel like that was a little too much, right? because the template for the X-Men universe has always been mutants are feared and hunted. And I know they try to get some interesting scenes between Xavier and Mystique where and they were interesting where Xavier is, where Mystique is basically like, you like being adored, and she's kind of accusing him of having an inflated ego and enjoying it. And then Xavier says, as opposed to being feared and hunted, yes, I do prefer this. I mean, and it's an interesting sentiment to explore in this film. I just feel like Apocalypse, the ending of Apocalypse, kind of made it impossible to make this have merit. But that's kind of a little nitpick, because as a standalone film, it doesn't bother me if I approach this film. But it's a series, right? So it's going to bother me nonetheless, I do like the fact that Xavier is a flawed character in this film. That's another thing that I've heard as far as negative criticism towards this film is I've heard people say like Xavier would never do those things, and like no. For anybody that honestly says like Xavier would never do that, Xavier would never do anything negative, like, you obviously don't read the comic books. Xavier has done some seriously messed up stuff, man, to the X-Men. He seriously has. I don't have any specific examples, but I've read so many comics and it's been a while. I've just started reading again, and I'm only in the early issues from the 60s and 70s, and they really didn't start exploring Xavier's moral ambiguity until maybe the late 90s, early 2000s, but he really has done some messed up stuff. And the point is, he's a flawed character. He's not perfect. And for Xavier to be a flawed character and have some of the team members of the X-Men call him out on it, I think that was beautiful as far as creating drama and making the movie interesting. I'm not against that whatsoever. I actually enjoyed that. Now, another thing that I really like about this movie is the score, the soundtrack. I really thought it was outstanding. And even though it's not John Ottman and it's a new person, I really love the score to this movie. I mean, it has a lot of drama and tension, and when it's juxtaposition with some of these scenes, man, it's really powerful stuff. Yeah, so the score to this movie was beautiful. Absolutely loved it. Oh yeah, Hans Zimmer made this score. So that's who, yeah, I forgot. Hans Zimmer made this score. So, wow. There you go. There's one good thing for you people that hate this movie. Because I know everybody automatically loves Hans Zimmer's work, even though I don't. I feel like some of it's hit or miss. But Hans Zimmer made the music to this movie, and he did an outstanding job. Really, really did. A lot of dramatic stuff going on with the music. Now, I really love the scene where the X-Men fight Jean, right? She's gone rogue. They want to bring her back to the team. And this is when she goes to visit her father and finds out that he's still alive, and finds out that he basically disowned her. It was his decision. And that was extremely hurtful to her. And then the X-Men try to bring her back, but she can't control the Phoenix Force. And this is when she impales Mystique. All that action was great. I thought that was great. Really. Now, I will say this. Xavier should have been the one to react mostly to Mystique's death in the context of this series. Instead, they have Beast be the one to run up to her like, no, man. they really wanted to sell this whole like Mystique and Beast love each other kind of thing, but it was glossed over through these movies. All you really saw was them like have the occasional kiss, but you never really saw them be a full-blown relationship. Boyfriend and girlfriend, husband and wife, whatever. You never really saw that. And again, this ties back to this whole 10-year later thing. It feels like Apocalypse happened last month, man. And it's supposed to be 10 years later. Well, then they should be together. But instead, it's really not established. And considering the fact that Mystique is supposed to be Xavier's foster sister, which I always hated and thought was complete bullshit, he should have the reaction and be like, no. But instead, he's just like, you know, holding back the tears, chilling in his wheelchair. I mean, he doesn't even like maneuver his wheelchair forward to be like, no, Mystique. And he just stays in place in the background, shedding a tear while Beast runs up to her like, no. And I'm like, nah, that's a role reversal, man. That should have been Xavier. Or it could have been both characters, but I'm just saying Xavier's reaction, there should have been way more there. I'm not going to lie about that. And I feel like that is a completely fair criticism to have right there. Now, I really like the scene between Cyclops and Storm where she basically tells him, like, it wasn't an accident, Scott. And that's after he tells the students that ask him, like, they basically ask him, is it true? Did Jean kill Mystique? Is it true? And he tries to, you know, shrug it off as an accident or explain it away as an accident, and then Storm confronts him. And I really like that scene. Again, this film has drama. It actually has scenes, man. It's not just, things aren't just glossed over, and it's not just some like happy-go-lucky nonsense like some of First Class felt like. And this brings us to another great scene where Beast confronts Xavier. That was an awesome scene where he's like, apologize, Xavier. Admit you were wrong about hiding the truth from Jean. Admit that you were wrong. I love that scene. And then Xavier refuses to admit, right? And Beast, his position is that he messed with the mind of a little girl. And he's obviously upset because the woman he loved or had feelings for, Mystique, was killed as a result of his tampering. I mean, he's obviously upset because Mystique died, right? I mean, and I don't think this all happened because of Xavier's tampering with her mind. This happened because she absorbed the Dark Phoenix. I mean, it's a combination, right? It's an equation. There's lots of components to the equation, right? And that was a great scene. Lots of drama in this movie. Again, loved it. Thought it was awesome. And also the sequence where Jean goes to Genosha. Another great scene. All that stuff with Magneto. Love it when he's like, what happens when you're angry? Show me, Jean. Show me what happens when you're angry. And he's like, whose blood is that? And she doesn't want to tell him that it was Mystique's. And then I love that whole action sequence with the helicopters. You know, it's like Jean and Magneto playing tug of war with this helicopter. That was awesome. Love that. Absolutely love that. I mean, that's another thing that another unreasonable criticism that I've heard from people in regards to this film is that, oh, this film, the action was unmemorable. I don't remember a single scene from this movie. I'm like, I do. I remember the space shuttle launch. That was great. I remember the helicopter scene. That was great. I remember the fight between the X-Men and Magneto at nighttime on the streets. That was awesome. And most importantly, I remember the sequence on the train. That was amazing. You want to talk about action? The action in Days of the Future Past, the scenes in the 1970s, those were boring to me. Especially the last third act. I mean, yeah, sure, there was emotion there, and I'm not saying it was bad, but I'm just saying as far as action-wise, there wasn't really much there. What, Magneto lifts a Coliseum and dumps it on the White House, and that's it. Wolverine gets bitch slapped off screen. That's it. The Sentinels, they don't do much. That was it. I mean, are you kidding me? This movie has great action, in my opinion. That's one of the things that I really love about this movie is the action. So, another criticism that I have is that, and this is for the most part every character, and I'm talking about the lack of reaction. The lack of a reaction to these aliens. So you have these aliens, and like nobody ever reacts in a way where it's like, what? Aliens? Are you telling me that aliens actually exist? Get the fuck out of here. And then they're like, oh my God, they're aliens. Aliens are real. Instead, it's like you get like a 1 second reaction. Like, what are you? And then that's it. Like, I think that's what Xavier says. He tries to read the mind of Jessica Chastain, and then he's just like, what are you? And that's it. And the same thing with Jean. Like, Jean is approached by Jessica Chastain's character, and it's like she shows him we're from a different world, and she's never like, there's just no reaction to the implications that there's life outside of Earth. And I'm like, come on, man. Like, you gotta have your characters show a valid reaction, a reaction with some merit in regards to realizing that alien life exists. Not only alien life, but intelligent life exists outside of Earth. But nobody reacts to these aliens. And I thought that was absurd. Like, come on, man. But again, the action when the X-Men go against Magneto was awesome. But before I get into that, I want to talk about the scene where Beast tells Magneto that Mystique is dead. That was another awesome scene as far as drama. It was great. You know, and then that's when they both decide to basically kill, quote unquote, kill Jean. And this is another criticism that I've heard against this film. They don't like this notion that Beast decides to go kill Jean. And you know what? I'm not against the notion of wanting to stop Jean because she's a threat. I'm not against the notion or the sentiment that some members of the X-Men feel that Jean needs to be stopped because a team member died as a result of her. Now, I am against the notion of Beast wanting to get revenge against Jean because Mystique died. Like, it's okay for Magneto to feel like that, but Beast, in other words, what I'm trying to say is I'm not against the idea of Beast wanting to take Jean out, but what the writers and filmmakers should have done, the way that they should have framed it, is that it should have been like, we have to stop Jean. She's too dangerous. We already lost a team member. We can't lose any more people, whether they're mutants or humans, because of Jean. She needs to be stopped. That's how it should have been presented. But instead, it's presented in like this, like, oh, Mystique died. Oh, well, I'm going to kill her as a result, like, out of revenge. And I'm like, yeah. Beast shouldn't have gone along for that ride. Magneto can do that, but Beast, it should have been, she has to be stopped. She has to be stopped, Magneto. We can't let any more people die as a result of her. And then let Magneto want revenge, and that would have made sense. So that's how I feel about that. Now, the fight against the X-Men and Magneto was awesome. Loved that. You got Cyclops kicking ass. Finally, right? After how many years? I finally get to see Cyclops treated with some respect, man. Another reason why I love this movie. Really, why I enjoy it. Finally get to see Cyclops treated with some respect for once. And I love the scene where Magneto is basically on the streets, ready to go inside and kill Jean. And Xavier's trying to convince him not to go and kill Jean. And he just says to him, like, you're always sorry, Charles. And there's always a speech. I love that line of dialogue. That was great, man. Again, that was an epic action sequence that took place right there. Love seeing Cyclops kicking ass. Love seeing Jean torture Magneto with his own helmet. Like, oh my God, whenever people say on the internet, this movie sucks, I don't remember a single scene, the action sucked, it was not memorable at all. I'm like, I immediately think of what comes to mind is seeing Jean torture Magneto with his own helmet, crushing his skull. That was badass as fuck. Are you kidding me? That was awesome. And the way it's juxtaposition with Hans Zimmer's score, that was epic, man. That was epic. I loved it. And when Jean is like, walk to me, and then she makes Xavier get up out of his wheelchair, and again, you have Hans Zimmer's epic music playing, and he's like, ah, and it's like so painful and torturous for him to walk, and she's like, walk to me. Are you kidding me? That was epic as fuck, homie. Like, what are you talking about? That was great. And then it's here where Xavier helps Jean remember her past. And then she could look inside his mind and see that Xavier wasn't coming from a place of maliciousness. He wasn't being malicious in trying to hide those memories of her father disowning her. He was coming from a place of compassion, and then this is what makes her walk away from the aliens. And then we see that the Jessica Chastain character, whatever, the alien, wants her power. And then again, I love the action here. I love it when Cyclops saves her. That was amazing. I love this movie, and I don't care what any of you fucking say. Give me a thumbs down and unsubscribe. Kiss my ass. I don't care. I loved it. When Cyclops came in there and zapped Jessica Chastain's character. And he was like, Jean! Bah! And he zapped her. Ugh! Just like the comics. Just like the animated series, man. That was beautiful. It was beautiful. Then we see that the mutants, whether it was Magneto's mutants and the X-Men, are captured by the authorities. Then we have another epic action sequence on the train where the aliens are trying to capture Jean. And then here we get to see Nightcrawler cut loose. Nightcrawler kicked some fucking ass in this scene, man. I loved it. He went completely ballistic. And then I see some people criticize like, oh man, like Nightcrawler was too violent here. He was too violent. You know, that's outside of his character. Like, what? Are you kidding me? Like, first of all, these aliens are evil as fuck. They want to eradicate all life on Earth. I think it's okay to, like, you know, cut loose and be a little violent. Let me ask you this. Would you say the same if it was Wolverine fucking up all these people? No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't. You're being hypocritical, man. Awesome action sequences, man, on this train. Another one, Magneto with the assault rifles trying to stop those aliens. That was badass as fuck, man. Like, what's wrong with you? And seeing Cyclops aid Xavier. He has Xavier on his shoulder and he's trying to get him to that cart where Jean is, and he's zapping these aliens. That was beautiful. Beautiful. Beautiful to see Cyclops get some love, man. Finally. Oh, but you didn't like it. You think this movie's worse than X-Men 3. You think it's the worst one in the series. Hey, too bad for you, man, because I love this movie. Warts and all. And then, finally, we see Jean destroy the leader of the aliens. Basically saying, like, you want it? You want this power? Here. You can have it. And then, that's what kills the main alien. Jessica Chastain's character. But you know what? Even as much as I like this, man, you really got to think about it, man. You see how hard these fucking aliens are to kill, and you see how many of these aliens there were, And I guess we could presume a majority of them, that they were killed in this big fight on the train. But, you see how hard they are to kill. It seemed like, in other words, we should have seen Jean kill all these fucking aliens, right? Or at least whatever aliens are remaining. Because based off what we've seen before and how hard they are to kill, it's almost like they're fighting the T-1000 from the Terminator. To see her just kill the leader, it kind of makes me ask, like, are they all dead? Because it seemed like they were pretty hard to kill, but you could see what they were going for. They wanted Jean to kill the leader and make it seem like she saved the day, and she did. All I'm saying is, like, maybe we should have cut to all the aliens being wiped out by Phoenix, not just the leader. Maybe that is what happened, but I can't remember right now, but whatever. And here's a major shortcoming for this film. So Jean, quote unquote, dies because she sacrificed herself to kill the aliens. And the film just ends. Like, dude, can you please let me know how people feel about this? How does Cyclops feel about Jean being, quote unquote, dead? That was really important. Instead, you give me this rush job and end the movie. That was a terrible decision. We should have had a scene where Cyclops and Xavier talk about this. We should have had a scene where Beast and Xavier reconcile their differences. We get nothing. We get nothing. And that fucking sucks. Really. Another thing that was just preposterous, and they keep on making this mistake, man. They made this mistake in X-Men 3, and they made this mistake in X-Men Apocalypse. They keep showing Magneto hanging out in the civilized world, walking around like, hey, Xavier, let's have a chess game and a latte in front of all these people. And it's just like, look, dude, do you not get it? Magneto is a genocidal maniac. He is basically Hitler and Osama bin Laden times 100. You can't have this character walking around in downtown Paris in front of everybody, sipping a latte, going unnoticed, because if that were true in the context of the world you created, people would be like, oh my God, it's Magneto, call the FBI, call the authorities, oh my God, like, isn't there reward money? Like, the dude he's wanted. He's, you know what I'm saying? He's responsible for the deaths of a lot of people, He's a terrorist, whatever. And it's like they keep on forgetting, and they want to have this scene where Xavier and Magneto play chess and end it on a nice, pretty note. Okay, you can have that scene, but you got to have it in private or something. Why not have it, somewhere where they're secluded? But they're like there in like downtown Paris or something, in front of everybody, and you see people in the background sipping their lattes and no one's noticing Magneto, this genocidal war criminal hanging out there. And it's just preposterous. It really is. And then we see at the very end that Jean is still alive. You see the Phoenix rising, and that is probably the most famous trait of the Phoenix, that she always rises from the ashes. And that's the end of this movie. And, and despite the criticisms I have for it, I really enjoy this movie. I really did. I give it a B. Thank you for listening to this review and in-depth analysis. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and share. Take care, people. And last but not least, one love.